All right, we are live. So, hello everybody, and welcome to the music publishing podcast. Sorry, I'm starting another podcast, and I forgot which one I was doing all of a sudden. I'm here today with. We're off to a great start. What is this?
I don't know. What is it?
Oh God, that freaked me the fuck out. I'm actually going to restart because the live stream started playing in the background, and I didn't know what that was.
Oh,
so from the top. Hey everybody, welcome to the Music Publishing Podcast. I'm here today with Seth Hanes, the mastermind behind the Musician's Guide to Hustling. Hello, Seth.
Dennis, thanks so much for having me on today. Super excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. This will be fun. So Seth, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So first off, I should thank you. Dennis asked me before we got going. He was like, "Do you want to record early in the afternoon or later in the afternoon so that we can have a drink while we do it?" So I naturally said later in the afternoon. Yes. Cheers, sir. This is fantastic. I recorded like hours and hours and hours last night and wish I had a glass of wine with me. So my name is Seth Hanes. I am a French horn player. I'm based in Philadelphia. So I'm a French horn player by training, and I am also a digital marketing consultant, which that basically means, and we can talk more about this if you'd like, but basically means I help clients that are either performing arts organizations. I've worked with publishing companies, individual musicians, fitness professionals, all kinds of people, help better communicate with their audience online. That could be anything from building a website, building online email lists, helping them build their email lists. That could be any kind of advertising you see online, social media marketing, community management, anything like that. That's what I do for clients. So I've been doing that for about three and a half years now, give or take. And so I kind of took my background in music, which I still play, still freelance professionally around the area here. And I do consulting work with clients as kind of my other, what once upon a time was a side hustle is now my full-time job. I work for myself from home, and I get to freelance on the side as much or little as I choose to do, and I'm very lucky to do that. And I guess my other project that we're talking about here is I'm the founder of Musician's Guide to Hustling.com, which, for anybody that's not familiar with that, this is basically a blog that helps musicians get started freelancing and have a better understanding of the business side of things. And that has morphed into a book that is being released on October 10th called Break Into the Scene, which we can dive into any of this whenever you please, Dennis.
Awesome. Yeah, and for everybody who's so if you're watching live, the book will come out in a couple of weeks, but if you're on the audio feed, the book is out today. This episode will come out on October 10th.
Fantastic. Breakintothescene.com. You can find everything there.
Awesome. So tell me, how did you get started with the Musician's Guide to Hustling? What gave you the idea? Why did you decide to start that?
Sure. So the original kind of genesis of this idea came in the year after I graduated from Temple University. So I did my undergrad there. I have a degree in French horn performance, and I remember very vividly the day that I realized the orchestral musician route is not what I want to do. I just had no interest in pursuing auditions and following that kind of lifestyle, trying to get an orchestra. I didn't really have any interest in that. And so I remember thinking okay, so what else do I do? And so I read a ton of books about the subject. There's some great books out there, like David Cutler's Savvy Musician, Angela Beeching's, Beyond Talent. And there's a ton of books out there. Not a ton about the music stuff specifically, but I read everything I could. And I got this was also about the same time that orchestras were going. There was a lot. This was back in like 2011, 2012, and I started kind of getting interested in this stuff. And I realized that, I didn't want to pursue the orchestral route, and I was interested in kind of doing my own thing. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but a starting place for me was figuring out, okay, why are these orchestras so terrible at business? Like, how are they so awful? And this is not to say that all orchestras are terrible at business, but like, at the time, there were like, I think the Honolulu Symphony went bankrupt. I think the Detroit Symphony had a major like labor negotiation issue. The Philadelphia Orchestra was having issues. The Atlanta Symphony was having issues. Like all these big, huge institutions were having these issues. And I just got really, really interested in it. So I started reading a lot of books about like marketing and business and entrepreneurship. And I just wanted to understand, like I wanted to have a better understanding of what was going on and be able to speak intelligently about it. And along the way, I realized like, a lot of this stuff can be applied to my personal life as a musician. Like I can take these ideas, these concepts, these themes, and apply them to my personal life. And that really kind of sent me down the road of figuring out how to kind of like lit that entrepreneurial little flame in me. And, I've kind of gone all in ever since, but that was the initial kind of like starting point for it. And really to kind of like answer your question specifically, I wanted to basically create the resource that I wish I had had. So for me, I found that some of the biggest challenges that I faced, like myself and that my friends and colleagues were facing, that were also young students or young freelancers or people that were just trying to get more work, whether they had been in the scene for a while or not, was that a lot of people didn't really have a great grasp, and I was this way for a long time, around the idea that like there's a limited amount of work, but you can directly influence how much work you actually have. And so some of the big challenges that I faced, and that, at this point I have readers that follow my site from all over the world. There are almost 1,000 people that are on my email list that follow what I write and share and talk. And so it was resonating with people. And the things that I hear all the time are that, there are no new opportunities. There's these existing things. And if and when they disappear, the pie gets that much smaller, right? So there's more people trying to get a piece of that pie, and it's getting more competitive. It's getting more difficult, but you can create new opportunities. Like that's absolutely a thing, and it's something that everybody should, I believe everybody should actively pursue, because it will benefit them and the larger music world as a whole. But also people were saying things like, I know I need to meet these people, but I don't know who they are. Why would they want to talk to me? I don't have anything that I can bring a value to them. Like, how do I connect with these people that can help me move along? Whether that's a fellow freelancer or a mentor that can help you move along. And so those were some of the big topics that I wanted to explore. And the site was really meant to originally address those topics, and then just all the other challenges that are associated with being, a musician in this day and age, because it's so different than it was years ago. It's so different, and it'll continue to be different. It's always going to be evolving like rapidly. So that was kind of, solving those problems that everybody had was something I just wanted to kind of explore. And that's really what the site and the book ultimately are about.
Nice. That makes total sense to me. I when you said that you're creating a resource that you wished you'd had, that's something that totally resonates with me. Like, it's why I do this podcast. It's why I used to write the Composer's Guide to Doing Business. It's why I've done a lot of things. It's like this is something that I wish that I had. Sure. Back then.
Absolutely.
All 12 years ago. But things have definitely
many moons ago.
Many a moon ago. Things have definitely changed. I've talked about this before with some other people on the show. Just since I got out of undergrad in 2004, things are vastly different. And just the past 5 years, things have changed drastically. And I think that, like what you're doing, and people like you, Garrett Hope, who you just talked to last night on his show, and that talk will come out soon.
Portfolio musician, plug for Garrett.
Yes. The portfolio composer.
Oh, excuse me, portfolio composer. Yes. Garrett just cringed when I said that. Sorry, Garrett.
now he bumped you from the queue. You're gone. You're off the show. But I think the things that you're advocating for, with being able to market yourself and create opportunities,
sure,
that allows, even when we know that things will continue to change and they might change drastically, those skills will allow you to go forward and kind of weather those storms.
Right.
I think a lot better than just the typical thing that we tend to do, which is, stick our head in the sand and hope that it goes away, and just do the thing that our teachers did and their teachers did, and just try to carry on like tradition in some form.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is important to kind of point out about this is that, sometimes I remember actually I was sitting with a very good friend of mine from school. He is he's a fellow at New World Symphony, and so he was in town recently, and there's this great little diner in Center City, Philadelphia, where he used to go. It's like the place that like everybody knows is like, that's like the cheap little 24-hour diner. Like it never closes, it's always open. So this place, Little Pete's. So he and I met up, and we were like, all right, let's go. He was like in town for just like an hour. So we're like, he was picking somebody up at the train station. So like just a couple blocks away. He's like, well, let's go grab a bite and let's hang out. And I was talking to him about this, and he said something really interesting to me. He was like, well, he brought up a great point, and he was like, well, but not everybody wants to be a freelancer. Like, why would you like? And I was like, that's funny. That's interesting you say that, because I don't think about it as like, I don't look at what I do or what you talk about, or what people like Garrett talk about, or Sean Perrin on the Clarinet, or Jason Heath's podcast, or Hugh, or at Musical Life, all these different guys like we're talking about. I don't think that it's about like, you should be a freelancer, like you should be, if this had to be a full-time freelancer, rah, go for it. I think it's more about having the skill set so that you have the option of doing it when it's relevant and applicable to you. So like, if you want to do this, if you choose to go out there and you want to start your own project, for example, I'm more interested in teaching people the skill set so that they can use it to however much or as little as they want that's important to them. I don't think it's about being like a full-time freelancer or, being an entrepreneur or whatever it is. Like, I'm not really that interested in that. I'm more interested in equipping people with the fundamental skill sets that they can apply to different scenarios as they go.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those people who are interested in creating more opportunities, it's possible to create opportunities beyond just for you.
Absolutely.
So, I just had the founders of Rhymes with Opera on a few weeks ago, and they're hiring for a new position. They are now creating. They're job creators.
Yeah, stimulating the economy.
Yeah, they're creating positions. I don't know if they're. I kind of doubt that they're full-time positions, but they're creating opportunities for other people to come in.
Sure, but they're creating opportunities where other people can learn. They can, it's another revenue stream for somebody else. They're creating more. They're probably creating more opportunities for performers, and as a result, there are people that have to arrange and publish that music and show up and help run the recitals and things. Like when you create opportunities, you're inherently going to create opportunities for other people, and it's going to ripple out, right?
Yeah. Like when I did my concert series, it was to get my music performed, but in the process, I had to perform a bunch of other people's music, and so there were more performers that were brought in, and more composers got their stuff heard. It was. While attempting to do a basically self-serving thing, I'm not going to deny that, I was able to create opportunities for my colleagues.
Absolutely,
and that was a big part of what it was about. But yeah, like when you create these things, you create them for others as well.
Yeah, totally, 100%. And I think that's an important point for people to consider. Also, is that like we very much work in an industry that is kind of stuck in the way it was, 100 years ago, which is like crazy, but it's true in a lot of areas, in a lot of like portions, like a lot of parts of like, this business. I mean, things haven't changed that much.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's important for people to consider that whenever they're creating new opportunities for themselves, like it's going to ripple out to other people. And like, but just think about this for a second, like if every single person out there was creating one opportunity, let's say a year, every musician was creating one little concert series, one performance, one new recording, one new like arranging project for like a big group or something. Think about how many more people there would be getting called for these extra little gigs and opportunities, things that come up. But if every single person was just doing one thing every year, that would be tens of thousands of new things happening all over the world or the country or city, wherever it is, every year. And it's like if people want to look at it from the perspective of, because I think this is something that Garrett and I talked about on his show, the Portfolio Composer, not musician. But like we were talking about how like musicians, I think inherently have this kind of, this sounds a little bit like self-helpy to say, but they have a little bit of like a scarcity mindset. They look at everything as like, it's like very finite. There's only so many opportunities and I don't want to help other people get there because then that's going to take away from me. And I'm not interested at all. I don't really care about that. I don't think that's true at all. I really believe in what I call the, what some people would call like the abundance mindset, or, what I think about it as like the opportunity mindset, where it's like, there are always opportunities out there. And even in places you would never think to look. I mean, this is like, I talk about this a ton in my book, but like, there are opportunities out there where you can create value for yourself and other people by just being on the lookout for it. And so like, I think this idea that like, this idea of like scarcity, where it's like, oh, well, there's only so many jobs out there. Like it's me against the world. Like I have to take on everything. I just don't think that's productive. I think that's kind of a waste of time actually, because the reality is like, if you can't take on an opportunity, it's not like they're going to say like, oh, Dennis couldn't compose that piece for us, or he couldn't help us out with this arrangement this time. Oh, well. I guess we just won't do it. No, they're going to say, okay, like who else can we use?
Yeah, next.
Like who else can do this job for us? So, I mean, I think it's a little silly to kind of look at it from that perspective. It just doesn't make sense to me, but but I think it's a really important like kind of point for people that are out there listening or watching or whatever it is, that you have to be like looking at it from like this optimistic perspective, I think, of like abundance versus like scarcity, because the scarcity thing doesn't really help anybody, I don't think. And, if you're thinking from the perspective of like abundance and how you can create more opportunities for yourself and those around you, you're going to be in much better shape. You absolutely will.
Totally.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm looking over at YouTube. This is the first time that just on Monday, Google decided to divorce Google Plus from YouTube.
That's right. I heard about that actually from a mastermind that I'm in.
Yeah, it's a little odd. So like I'm looking, like waiting for comments to come in on YouTube. I'm like,
oh, are there comments? Is that a thing?
No, they're not yet. Just me saying welcome.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out, is there anybody watching live or not? I don't know. But but
if you are, hello.
Yeah, hello. Hey, drop us a comment. So what are some of the main, like if you were, for someone coming to your site and looking for information, what are some of the big things that they'll find there? What are they going to, who's like your ideal audience, and what are they going to try to come away with?
Yeah, so my ideal audience is really, I would say, generally speaking, it's younger musicians that are either getting started for the first time or trying to grow what they're doing. And, but I try to write in a way that it's relevant to people that want to do more, even if they've been, freelancing in, say, in New York for the last 20 years, and they're trying to expand into new territory, or pursue new opportunities. I try to write in a way that it's relevant to everyone, but I would say I'm definitely, my writing resonates mostly with mid 20 to mid 30 somethings that are, trying, whether they're moving to a new city, they just finished school, they are trying to grow what they're doing. And the thing that I'm really interested in is giving extremely actionable advice. I want people to read an article that I write or that I share and be able to do something with it and implement it right away. So one of the examples of this, I do this on the site, and also I do it throughout the book, is, just one example is I get people exact email scripts. So it's if you want to start meeting new people and you want to start reaching out to people, the most frustrating thing in the world is when you go to look at, say oh, I really should email this person. We all have somebody like that. Everybody does. I have them. I have them too. Everybody has these people. But the challenge is you open up Gmail, you sit there, you type in, you're like, oh crap, what do I say in the subject line? Oh God, I don't know. What should I say? Should I say this? Is this right? Should I use it as a question? Should I say hello? What should I do? And our minds immediately start turning right of am I doing this right? Am I doing it wrong? Are they going to think I'm an idiot? Are they going to, they're going to think I'm some schmuck that's trying to take their work? And we get so in our heads. So I've always been really just interested in psychology. And so I take a look at kind of what my challenges are and figure out what is something that I wish I could have had. So in this case, this scenario, it's what do you actually say to people when you reach out? So one of the most popular posts I ever did was, there are two posts that really stick out on my mind. If I'm looking at Google Analytics, I can very distinctly see the spikes where they stick up where I posted these articles. But the first one was how to get started freelancing, how to start reaching out to people and just say hey, I'm around. If you ever need anybody, this is not a hard sell. I know you probably have people, but if you ever need anybody that can, I don't know, arrange something for your ensemble or compose a new piece or whatever it is, or you just need a church organist to sit in on a Sunday, whatever it is. If you ever find that you need somebody, I'm around and I'd love to work together sometime.
Nice.
So I basically put together a script that I use. This is a script that I literally created, at this point years ago. I've used this hundreds of times. I've generated, at this point, probably tens of thousands of dollars of gigs from just using this script to reaching out to people. And so I get people exactly what to say. They can literally copy and paste, fill in the blanks, and send emails and reach out to people. And if they choose to do it, choose to take action on it, choose to implement it, you can get results. If you put that much work into it, it's the result is proportionate to the amount of work you put into it, right? Like anything.
Yeah.
And another example of a popular article was I wrote. It was called "How to Make Contractors Want to Hire You." And basically, the whole concept of this is that musicians, I think, unless they've done contracting work, don't know how much of a pain in the ass it can be. It could be so frustrating. If you're a contractor that's responsible, so there's an ensemble here in Philadelphia that I contract for. It's a church concert series, and they do 3 performances throughout the year. It's called Wayne Oratorio Society, and so I do all the contracting for this group, and and I've done other stuff too. But there's nothing more frustrating than when you email people and they don't respond. They just don't respond at all, or they'll email you weeks afterwards and be like, oh, hey, by the way, I can still do this gig. And it's dude, are you kidding? I asked you 2 weeks ago, I need to have this roster set. I have other things going on. Yeah. So one thing that people struggle with is they don't put themselves in the mind of the other person. So for me, everything, and this is something we can definitely talk more about this, but everything about like really successful marketing is all about adding value to your potential customer. In this scenario, if you're a freelancer of anything, whether you do arranging or you are a pianist or a trombonist or a horn player or a singer, whatever it is, if you're a freelancer, your customer is the ensemble that is hiring you. They are the people that are paying for your product or service. So your job is to think about, how can I make their lives easier? They will absolutely love you and thank you if you help them out. So one of the things I tell everybody to do is, even when you have to turn down the gig, say, hey, thank you so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it. I really do. I wish I could play. I'm unavailable this weekend, whatever it is. But here are 4 or 5 people that would totally knock it out of the park if you need them. So if you need the names, here they are. And there's something really important that happens when you do this. A, you're helping the contractor do their job, because if you're looking, so like whenever I hire, like I think violinists are really difficult to hire because they're always the group that you need the most of. And I'm a brass player. Like I know a ton of violinists, but like I don't know as many violinists as a violinist does.
Yeah.
So whenever someone just says, nope, can't do it, sorry, but I need to hire violinists, if they say, hey, you know what, I can't do it, but friends, they're phenomenal players, they're super cool, they'd be great to work with, here's their contact info. If you need them, feel free to reach out. That is a huge help to people.
Oh, yeah.
Huge help. And so you're helping the contractor out, you're passing work off to your friends or colleagues, and you're leaving a good taste in their mouth because they will remember you if you help them out, right?
Yeah.
So like simple things like that, those are the 2 biggest posts. The one about reaching out to anybody and the one about being, how to connect with contractors. And will it work every single time? No, of course not. Nothing works every time. But like, but these are like some of the fundamental strategies that I've used to, dramatically scale up the amount of work I've done in the last, 4, 5, 6, whatever years, to kind of get where I am, and they're simple things that anybody can do. Yeah. No matter if you're a sophomore and music ed major that's just trying to pick up a couple of gigs to help pay your rent, or if you're a freelancing professional that does orchestral work and arranges on the side, or a full-time arranger that plays, the piano on the side, whatever it is. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in. Really hard, actionable things that people can use immediately.
Nice. So a composer who might be listening to this show would probably be really well served to check out your email article if they're looking to get more performances of their works, to reach out to an ensemble or to some performers.
Right. And so we're kind of getting into like just like the fundamentals of marketing here. And so one of the things that I think is really important for anybody to understand is, like, first off, these articles and these scripts don't mean anything if you don't know who your customer is. Like, if you don't know what are real opportunities for you in what you do. So whether that's composing, arranging, or performing, or teaching, whatever it is, the first most fundamental thing is understanding who your audience actually is. Who are they? And then you can understand, what do they care about? What are the problems that I can solve for them? Why are they hiring someone to do this for me? Or why are they hiring someone to do this for them, excuse me? And so, like, why are they hiring me to do something that they very well may be able to do themselves? Like, for example, in the context of, like, arranging, I mean, let's use the example of, like, a local church choir that wants to, say, like, somebody out there is a really talented choral arranger, and they can arrange, 2, 3, 4-part harmony works for any level of choir, right? So there's a church in town. Let's say you live in, where do you live, Dennis? Is it Brooklyn or Queens?
I'm in Queens, yeah.
Queens. So let's say there's a church. There's probably 50 churches in Queens that have a choir that have
4 blocks.
that are like literally, like, you can see them out your window probably. But seriously though, like, I mean, think about it from the perspective of, like, okay, so if I want to do work for like choral arranging, what are the challenges that that director has that he would hire someone to solve for him?
Mm-hmm.
So probably one of the most obvious ones, if you're a choir director at a church, the skill level of your choir members might be dramatically different, right? So like you might have a bass that like doesn't know anything about like, proper singing technique or the repertoire, but he loves to sing and he's a great member of the choir. So like if you were a composer or an arranger and you were talking to these clients, what are the things they really care about? One of them is probably having repertoire that's appropriate for their choir, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the question. Could they arrange that themselves?
That the director?
Yeah, the director.
Directors usually have some skill at arranging, but mostly they're not taught to do that. So
right, and so
definitely not their skill set.
Yeah, and well, the kind of angle that I would go from, like, if I were the one kind of selling this product or service, would be like, look at what the director has, like, what is the director dealing with? And this is like a pretty specific example, but I think it really illustrates the thought process of like really effective marketing.
Yeah.
So, like, are they physically capable of arranging for their choir? Sure. They know enough to be able to do the job reasonably well for their church service. Absolutely. But they're probably not paying you an arranger to come in and do that because they don't know how to do it. They probably don't have time. So it's like so like if you were trying to sell your services, and again, we're using this scenario of I am a choir director and I need someone to arrange this for the Easter service is really big at my church. It's this one of the 3 days a year that everybody goes to church. I want this thing to be like I want to like just totally knock this thing out of the park. I want to have great arrangements that work for my choir. And if you're that conductor though, you're probably very busy. You're probably stretched pretty thin. You're probably dealing with like hiring contractors. You probably have like extra soloists coming in. Maybe you have a brass quintet or a timpani coming in for that service, whatever it is. And you need music that's going to fit for the service. The selling point is not, I can arrange the music. It's like, no, dude, I can save you time, energy, and resources and get you a better product without you having to lift a finger.
Yeah.
That is a huge selling point for someone that wants to get involved in doing this kind of stuff, because the choir director, it might seem like they're paying for like, we're just paying to have arrangements done. But really what they're probably paying for is not having to deal with it themselves.
Yeah, totally.
And that's a really big difference from the way that most people think about that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. I think
does that make sense?
That makes total sense. It reminds me of a sort of similar thing within the choral world that I've come across. I was at ACDA in 2013. Yeah, March 2013. And I met this director and we just started talking about, his choirs and what they do and what they have and what they don't have. And he primarily directed a young treble choir, so just SSA, and he was so annoyed at the general repertoire that was available for newer works, because since treble choir doesn't have that lower end, you either have to make up for it with a piano or some sort of obligato instrument.
Sure.
Now, he doesn't have the resources to hire another instrumentalist. He has his pianist that comes in, at the end. And anything that, and the other like thing that he ran into was that this was typically written, the music that he finds is typically written for, like the sopranos sing too high than his students are capable of, and the altos sing too low than his students are capable of. He was just saying, I need music that is within this range that's not too technically demanding, that doesn't have all these extra instruments that I can't afford to hire because I don't have a budget and I can't pay for it out of my own pocket.
Absolutely.
And that's also not boring as fuck.
Right. Very important point.
Yeah. And, like good music that fits within these parameters.
Things that work well for the scenario that I'm working in. I don't have the resources to hire a brass quintet and 5 ringers and a bass section or whatever. Totally.
So the first thing I did was I went home and I wrote a piece that fit those parameters.
And he was probably like, oh my God, this is great, because this guy had probably never had something that was written well for his group.
Yeah. So like that's something that's like an actionable thing. Like people write that music. If you have the desire to write treble choir music, do that. People want it. But also just listen to directors, talk to people Absolutely. And find out what they want.
Yeah, understand who your audience is. Like if you are a like a great example of this is, this is on my mind just 'cause I was talking to Garrett yesterday about this, but like, I think one of the things that Garrett does is he writes like young ensemble music. So like, it's like, talk to the directors of whatever it is that you write really well. Maybe you have a phenomenal understanding of like elementary instrumental education. Like, know that like the young orchestra programs out there, maybe there's a hole in the market where they have a class of a string section, woodwinds, and trumpet, and like brass, and like they have trumpet players, but they can't all play in the same key very well, because for string players, the natural, like just how it naturally falls is like sharp keys are easier for them to play.
Yeah.
But wind players are like, oh my God, like I have to use 2 and 3. Like what is that? Like it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So like maybe there's an opportunity, a totally theoretical example, but maybe there's an opportunity somewhere where you could be the person that writes the music that makes that band director or orchestra director's life easier.
Yeah, totally. And I think right now in particular, composers, those of us who are serious about our craft, we tend to really we want to write for the big ensembles. We want to get the really kind of high profile, composing gigs, but really there's so much opportunity to write for younger groups, to write good music for younger groups that, it's only going to make them more interested in continue, like just on the level of the students, it's going to make them more interested in playing their instruments and in continuing, rather than just doing lightly row.
The things they could have played on
over and over until like they're pulling things out and opening their wrists. Because I said episode 2 of this show, I was telling Jen Jolly that my former orchestra director at Herscher High School, she's just so frustrated with the state of orchestra music for a decent high school group. That you can get, like, for a decent band, you can get amazing music, but for a decent orchestra, good luck. You're going to get like a really terrible, a terrible arrangement of the band thing that doesn't really understand how an orchestra works. That's knowing an audience that you can totally write for. You can totally do wonderful things and get a lot more gigs.
Well, and one thing that, like, just one action step for people that are listening is that might be thinking like, okay, this sounds great, but like, how do I implement it? How do I apply it? Figure out what it is that you are really interested in and capable of delivering a great product for, and whoever that target audience is. We're kind of using like the young music examples here. Go talk to those directors and say, hey, I'm just curious. What's the most frustrating thing about programming for your group? What is it? Just ask. And they might and they'll probably give you some very insightful things that you may have no concept of whatsoever. I mean, I used to be a pretty involved in like arranging and things. I used to be like really into composition back in the day. I don't do it as much anymore, and I wish I did. But one of the things I remember, I actually got hired by my teacher a couple of times, who is a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra. Like, he's like the associate, his name's Jeff Lang. He's the associate principal in the Philadelphia Orchestra. And so like, he had a really specific problem. He was basically, he's like the musician at the church. Like, he's like in the Philadelphia Orchestra. And so he and his wife were basically in charge of the so in that situation, they had, they probably had a couple of string players, like 6 guitarists, 3 drum set players, and a trumpet, like some like random thing. But like, so he had to come up with music for that ensemble that worked for that ensemble. And so he had these like tunes that he was doing. He had these like hymn parts that he had handwritten parts for people. And so he would hire me to basically take those parts and just set them in finale, like create real parts, where it's like, oh, here, you have 18 measures of rest here, and just label like verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, you come in here, just like create parts for people. Yeah. And what an unbelievably specific thing, but he's not the only person out there that has that problem. It's all about understanding who your audience really is, and reach out to them, ask them questions, just say, hey, what is the biggest challenge, frustration you have? And just listen. Don't make any assumptions about what they are. Just listen. And then assess the answers and talk to, 3, 4, 5, 10 people. And just listen for the common things, and then figure out, okay, is there a market for this? Is there like a little hole in the market that I could fill, that I could add some value to these clients, these potential customers? What is it? Is it there? If you go around and talk to people and just seriously say, hey, like, can I take you out for a cup of coffee? I know you're on a lunch break this day at this time. Like, would you be interested in like going and sitting in a coffee shop, and like, if I could just pick your brain a little bit, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. You probably have 10 friends that you could ask about this stuff. If you're like, if you're a working musician that went to school and know a bunch of people, and if you do this and get a really true understanding of what the problems are that people have, you will be 100 miles ahead of everybody else, because they're basing what they're doing off of assumptions they're making about what the market wants. But you will actually be talking to the market. Yeah. Which is astronomical difference in like the result and quality of information you'll be getting. So if someone out there is listening and they're wondering what they should do, go talk to potential customers that you think you could serve and ask them, what is the biggest challenge you have in delivering, XYZ thing, whatever it is for you. And just listen to what they say, and then try to figure out if that is a little bit of a market that you could fill, that you have the skill set, the ability, and willingness to fill. You'll be so far ahead of everybody else by doing that.
Yeah.
Nobody does this kind of stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately. So let's all start.
Yeah, everybody would be better served if more people were aware of how, people would be, the composers out there will be making more money. The directors out there will be more satisfied with the repertoire they have available with their ensembles. It's a win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah, totally. So we're at the 45-ish minute mark here. So let's pivot to the book. Why don't you tell us about the book?
The book, sure. So for folks that are interested in checking this out, the book is called Break Into the Scene: A Musician's Guide to Making Connections, Creating Opportunities, and Launching a Career. And so the whole premise of this book is basically that there are a lot of like career books for musicians out there, and I've read them all. And one of the biggest challenges that I think I had as you know, as like a user, as a reader, as a follower of this material, was that I would read it and I didn't feel that everything I was reading was directly relatable.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, it wasn't actionable. It wasn't something that I could implement really quickly to
Mm-hmm.
get a result.
Mm-hmm.
So when I wrote this book, my number one goal was I wanted people to be able to read the book. I purposely made it very short. It's like it'll take you 2.5 hours to read the entire thing. And the goal of this whole project is that people can read what they're doing, or excuse me, read the book and actually apply what they read to what they want to be doing immediately. I want someone to sit down on a Sunday morning and read this book and be able to be using and implementing the material that afternoon. That was my goal. And because a lot of the books out there, they talk about what's possible. And, you know, there's a lot of things where they talk about kind of like, you know, with a 30,000 feet view, like, here's what's possible. Here's what you can do. Look at all these great case studies of all these really successful people.
Mm-hmm.
But they really conveniently glaze right over how to actually take the first steps to get there.
Yeah.
So my whole goal with this book is to make it super actionable, because if you can get 1 gig, you can get 2.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get 2, you can get 5, and then 10, and then, you know, 20, and so on. And you can start scaling it up depending on how much you want to be doing. And again,
Mm-hmm.
we come back to this idea of it's not about being a full-time freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
It's about having the skill set and toolkit at your disposal to take advantage of as much or as little opportunity as you want to do. So that was really the big goal I wanted to achieve. I wanted to show people how they can actually start connecting with the people around them. I give, you know, I talked about this earlier, but there are exact scripts people can use in the book. And for anybody that's interested in this, that is like wants the TLDR version of this, you can go, that too long didn't read, go to breakintothescene.com and click on bonuses, and you will get access to all of the scripts, everything from, you don't even have to read the book. I'll just give you the scripts. They're right there for you to use. Go to breakintothescene.com and click on bonuses. You can take advantage of these scripts and start using them today. You don't even have to buy the book. They're there for free. Use them. And I would love to hear what result you get. But the whole purpose of the book really is to make it actionable. Show people how to connect with others authentically. Not this like schmoozy kind of like douchey networking kind of thing that a lot of people think.
Networking with a capital N.
Yeah, you know, I think that's I think a lot of people really misunderstand what networking, quote unquote, networking is.
Totally.
It's about establishing like relationships and legitimate connections with people, and not as much about like hawking business cards, which I think a lot of musicians perceive it to be, and not just musicians, everybody. But it's about, so like I talk about how do you make authentic connections with people? How do you really genuinely relate and connect with them? How do you figure out who they are? How do you know who you should be talking to? I talk about all of this. You know, if you don't have connections, how do you get going? Because the reality is a lot of people, and this is one of the things I talk about in the book, is like, I remember one time there was an article or a thread on Reddit that, this was my first problem, was that I was on Reddit, but I was like following this thread, and I made a comment about like, well, you know, it's not always about being the best player. Obviously you should be very skilled at what you do. You should have obviously that's important. That goes without saying, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be able to connect with the people around you. And I remember this guy, this like random dude, was like, you know, that sounds great, but I'd rather be hired based on my ability to play than, you know, just having good social skills. Like, I don't think that's right. And, you know, the reality of it is that like, yeah, obviously you have to be able to play, compose, arrange, perform well. You have to be able to do the job that you're being hired for.
Yeah.
But that's impossible. It's impossible to get hired if nobody knows who you are. It's impossible. You cannot get hired for things if nobody knows you exist. They do not know you're doing this. So I remember that like really resonated with me. So I wanted to talk about that in the book. It's like, how do you authentically connect with people? How do you create the opportunities? You know, everybody's had that idea where they got really excited about, and they spent all day on a Saturday plugging away doing it. And then they realized like, oh, I don't really know how to take the first steps on this to like really make it a reality. I cover all of this. And probably the most like important thing is that I hope people take away from the book is that you can influence the amount of work you do. Mm-hmm. You have direct control over how much work you do. And the whole purpose I wrote this book for was to give people the skill set and the toolkit necessary to make that a reality. So if you want to, do arranging for these, big chamber groups that want to adapt pieces for their ensemble, you can do it. Like you can do that. It's not that crazy difficult, but you have to understand who your customer is, what do they care about, and how you can authentically connect with them in a way that they want to work with you.
Yeah.
So I cover all of this in the book. It's all spelled out in step-by-step actionable takeaways that people can use. And that's really the goal of the book. That's kind of the gist of it.
Nice. I'm already like daydreaming of, okay, I have to look up these scripts and I can probably adapt them to my own ends and make them, hey, I can go here and I can do it like that. Yep.
Anybody listening, breakintothescene.com. It's available at Amazon. It's either Kindle or paperback, whichever you prefer. It's there. It's available. And if you want the bonuses and you're like, I don't really know if this is real or not, go to breakintothescene.com. You can download the bonuses they're free. Just click on the button bonuses and they're yours.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have links to all of that in the show notes so people can check that out
Sure.
on the
Sounds
Music
great.
Publishing podcast site. And probably I'll even throw it in the resources page as well, so it's not just buried.
That'd be great.
Post. Cool. So we're coming up on the hour here. So is there any other wisdom that you think that you'd like to impart? Not that you think that you can. There's you have wisdom you can impart. You know it. What can you leave us with before we ask where we can find you?
Yeah, there's a great quote that I used in the book from it's from the comedian Milton Berle. Mm-hmm. And he just simply says, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. If you want to be doing the work, but the opportunities aren't there, go create it for yourself. You can absolutely do it. There's no reason that you cannot go out there. If you really, truly want to be doing it, there's no reason you can't pursue it and make it happen. We live in a world of essentially limitless resources to make things a reality, right? You got to figure we have more. Just this computer that we are recording on has more firepower than what we had when we went to the moon.
Yeah,
that's insane. Like we have access to more information than what the president had 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. We can Google anything. You can learn anything. If there's something in your way that you feel like is a barrier and you want to get past it, the information is there. The resources are there. And it's your job to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Use that to your advantage. Go out there and learn what you need to do and go make it happen. You can absolutely do it. There's no reason why you can't do it.
Nice. I wholeheartedly stand behind that. So Seth, where all can we find you on the internet?
On the interwebs. So the most important link for folks, I would love to hear feedback from anybody. The book website is breakintothescene.com. It's for sale on Amazon, Kindle and paperback. You can check out my blog at musiciansguidetohustling.com. Mm-hmm. I would love to see you there, hear from you. And if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, shoot me an email at seth@sethhanes.com. That's Hanes, just like the underwear. Whenever you tell people like the underwear, they never misspell it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
if you don't, they always misspell it. So it's seth@sethhanes.com. Shoot me an email anytime. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're a social media user, I'm just at Seth Hanes everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, whatever. You can find me there.
Perfect. So thank you for being here today. I'm looking forward to the book. I have a review copy that I haven't finished, and I feel terrible about that.
I just judged you so hard. Totally kidding, man.
But thank you for being here. This has been fantastic. Stick around for a minute, and we'll go back to the little green room.
Sure.
And everyone, thank you for listening to this week's show. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you don't want to listen to the show in your browser and you'd like to have the latest episodes come to you whenever they're available, so you can listen in your car, on your commute, at the gym, on a walk, instead of listening to your spouse or children talk to you, then subscribe on iTunes or Overcast or Player FM, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. The show is in so many different places that can come directly to your phone or your tablet. It's a pretty easy process. And if you have any questions about how to do it, pop me an email, musicpublishingpodcast@gmail.com, and I'm happy to walk you through that process. So again, thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you next time.